Things got a little spicy last night between Shaq Diesel and Sir Charles over there on stars being babied in the NBA. Stephen A., talk to me about what you just heard.
Well, first of all, they both make valid points. Let me say that. You do have to have a good relationship with your star player, but I agree with Shaq from the standpoint that DeMar DeRozan deserved to be benched. As a matter of fact, I went on the record and stated that I thought Dwayne Casey was doing him a favor. I think that Dwayne Casey, being the exceptional coach he is, who should not lose his job as a head coach of Toronto, by the way, was standing there on the sideline watching his star player get his heart stripped away from him by LeBron James. And Dwayne Casey knows his player and said he can't handle this. He's got to sit down, and sat him down for the last 14 minutes of that game. And so in that regard, I agree with Shaq that you don't have, just because he's your star player doesn't mean that you don't bench him. In the same breath, however, I get where Charles Barkley is coming from in terms of you got to really have a relationship with your player. And here's where Charles got Shaquille O'Neal. And Shaq is going to be mad. I love you, bro, but it's the truth. Shaquille O'Neal is a 4-time champion.
Yeah.
3-time NBA Finals MVP, 3-time champion with the Lakers. Shaquille O'Neal brought up the wrong example to make his point. Because when he said, I didn't see eye to eye with Pat Riley, well, you were not Pat Riley's best player. Dwayne Wade was Pat Riley's best player. When you were in L.A., you were Phil's best player. You were the most dominant force I'd seen in my lifetime, okay? So there's no questioning that. But when you were in Miami, I've had members of the Dallas Mavericks talk about how it wasn't Shaq they didn't want to see. It was Zoe, as in Alonzo Mourning, because he was such a defensive force and a pest. So even though Shaquille O'Neal was still formidable and was still capable of giving you some numbers, he was not what he was in L.A., and he clearly was not their best player at that particular moment. So when he brought up Pat Riley and not seeing eye to eye to Pat Riley, if he had said, I didn't see eye to eye with Phil, that would have made Shaquille O'Neal's argument stronger. The Pat Riley analogy works in Barkley's favor. Go ahead, Max.
This is very interesting, and you touched on some of it, but I actually have to write down bullet points to follow the argument to explain what I mean here. What I just saw, guys, is the same kind of problems that come about when couples have kids and raise kids. Like child rearing can not only bring out problems in a relationship, it can create them.
Wait, what
and
do
what
you
are they
mean by
really
child
talking about
rearing?
here? This is what I'm going to explain right now. And Shaq pointed to it in the middle of their argument when he said, you're babying these players. You see, the kind of philosophical argument they're having here, Shaq and Charles Barkley, is about how a coach is supposed to treat the player on the team. And Shaq hears Chuck being soft. He hears Charles, like one parent saying, you're being too soft on the kid. They need tough love. And the other one saying, no, you got to nurture the kid. Now, how did that come out in this specific argument? Well, Stephen A., you're right. He said the key was the Miami thing, right? So it starts out Chuck saying, just because you say it doesn't mean it's true. Right? Like, Shaq has this tendency, because he's one of the greatest players who ever lived and a greater player than Charles Barkley was and a multiple championship player, he has a tendency to insist, hey, I'm a champion, I know, you have to back off. And Charles Barkley is saying, you're just asserting that. You're not proving it, basically. So Shaq brings up an example, Miami. And Charles Barkley says, yeah, but you weren't the best player in Miami. And that was true. But that struck a nerve with Shaq, of course, because it feels like personal, like, what are you saying? So Shaq then throws the championship thing at Barkley, right? He's talking about you never won a championship. And Barkley then goes, oh, you're going to go there? Well, I didn't win a championship because I never played with Wade or with Kobe. But the way he framed it is they were carrying Shaq. Basically, what I saw is an argument about how to raise kids, either tough love or nurturing, devolve into personal attacks against one another, as it often does with couples.
Max Kellerman, we appreciate that philosophical breakdown that you just blessed us with. What do you think? Who do you think was right?
Charles Barkley.
Thank you. That's all I want to know. Thanks. I'm done. I appreciate it. I got an answer. That's all I care.
But the question was,
just explain quickly why you're saying Charles, in case people weren't clear.
well, because the question is, does the coach need to have a good relationship with their best player?
Yes.
And when I think of championship teams throughout history, I can't think of a single one where the coach and the best player were truly at odds. Like even Phil Jackson and Kobe Bryant. Kobe's uncoachable, this and that. Listen to Kobe talk about Phil. There's a deep and abiding respect there. There has to be something like that between the coach and the best player, or else we would have seen something like that where they've won a championship and that wasn't the case.
And
even
that's
if we
the
can
key
come
word,
up with
respect.
one,
Maybe they don't like each other, but always respect.
I appreciate that perspective, and I get it, but that was not what you asked. That's all I'm saying. I didn't know where you asked that question. We didn't ask that question. Molly didn't ask us that question. That's all I'm saying.
You guys,
Molly
let's just move on.
Molly just asked, hold on, time out. Molly just asked who was right. So the question is right about what? They were arguing right about whether the coach and the best player have to have a good relationship. That's precisely the question.
Except he never told us we were right until who was right until I asked you.
I think we should just go to break.
All right, let's go.
You guys are the best.